Alrighty. What's up, Dan Hatchman here with the breakdown on my new revision of the Spring Fling model, which is my performance groveler for really slopey and burgery waves. Now the design intent of this board is basically to give yourself the biggest and flattest planing surface, which we have right here, and then bring that in a way that is manageable so you can still rip through some turns. So it's quite evident in the outline. We've got this big flat area of the deck. Here it's really wide, and that width carries right up through the nose. So the rocker in the nose really doesn't start coming up much until about here. So if you look at that, as you surf it, it's really flat through here. So you put your weight on your front foot and you were just going to plane in the flattest of flat sections. And then once you have that speed, you can get this control. You can get some control back out of this nice smooth with a slight hip here on the tail. And then there's a little break in the rocker, which you can probably see there. So you can go quite distinctly between being on the front foot and driving and making a lot of speed, and then coming back onto the tail where the nice sharp and low rail edge will engage with the water and you'll be able to drive around through some turns. And basically you'll be ripping where there's the other guys on shortboards will just be pumping and having a terrible time. So now I'm going to talk about fin setup options. So most of the time I ride this board as a twin fin, but it is really up to your preference. The reason I ride it as a twinny, usually with the keel style fins, is because they make a lot less drag and just go insane. And this board is about making as much speed as possible and doing the best turns you possibly can in really slopey and flat surf. So the twin fin just seems like the logical option for that. It doesn't make any drag. You will go so fast. If you haven't ridden one before, definitely give it a go. The other option you can use is a tight clustered thruster, or you can go the halfway house, the twin plus one. This actually ties in pretty well because the regular thrusters are up here at about 11 and a tiny bit over 11 inches up. But when you put the keels in, they sit a little further back, about an inch further back, about 10-ish. Maybe even slightly further back than that. So you get this pretty balanced feeling when you ride it as a twin fin. Just very, very speedy through those flat sections. But if you want to ride it as a thruster, it works well like that as well, just due to the natural placement of the box. Even though I designed it as a twin fin, it means that the fin is actually in a pretty natural place for a thruster as well. And I do choose to ride this as a thruster when it gets sort of above 5 foot. You can never really ride it in barreling waves, but that's not the intent of this board. It would just sort of not be able to handle the power and want to flip over if you started riding it in barrels. But if it's slopey waves, you know, 5 foot plus. You can ride it as a thruster, and then it can just handle the extra power of those waves a lot better. If you keep riding it as a 20 there, when you come into these like cutbacks and carves and stuff, it's going to tend to be really squirrely at that higher speed. So the thrusters can just help it to go a little better in that bigger surf. Now if we look at the rocker, it's got this super flat section that we talked about earlier. Very flat planing surface, and then it just has like a very gradual kick into the nose. So you can still use this front area quite actively driving. It's not just like a flip up to stop it from poking. You really do drive off this nose area when you're in small surf, and then a quite distinct break in the rocker out the tail. So with this outline hip, with this outline in the hip, as well as a little break between the flat bit through here and then a little flip out the tail, you get this distinct kind of way of riding where you gain speed by holding on the front and then come back onto the tail and engage the rail and rip through some turns. This also is really useful with the swallowtail. I find the swallowtail helps create a lot of bite on the rail, especially with the low rails, so you get all this speed, and the swallowtail really helps grab the rail into the water, which is a big issue for really wide tails. So this tail is really wide, so it's quite drivey, and regularly if you do this with a squash tail say, it will want to like jump out of the water or go flat, whereas the swallow just really helps it like sit on that rail in a really comfortable and drivey way. We talked about fins, didn't we? Rails. So the rails, they're quite low. I mean, obviously if you change the thickness, it will change profile with how thick you go. But I kept them quite low so it gets this really drivey feel to it. And additionally, it's not like an even 50-50 kind of rail. It's a bit of a spiral down rail. So it has this like harder edge on the bottom here, and that just makes like the surface on the bottom wider, so there's like a larger surface area to plane off of, firstly, and secondly, it gives us this really cool like directional feeling when you're surfing it that makes it more drivey and you can pump a lot faster. Alright, that's it for the Spring Fling board. That's it for the Spring Fling board breakdown with me, Dan Hatchman from Hatcher Shapes. Like and subscribe to see more board breakdowns, trick tips, and board building instruction. Over and out.